Hey there, YouTube. Today, we're going to replace the steering rack. For those watching who may be interested in following along, I decided to show all of the part numbers for the parts that I recommend replacing when switching over to a Quaife quick rack. This one, the rack end bushing, if you've never seen one. I would recommend replacing this if you're ever doing a steering rack. The new one looks like this. They go out pretty commonly. I've heard some people pull steering racks and they don't even have them, and they just jiggle all about. So I'm gonna replace mine because they're easy to get a hold of. This one's a dust seal, and this one is the bearing that holds the pinion gear in. This right here is a new snap ring that holds the pinion gear in. And then this guy, this big old tube, is actually the new Quaife quick rack. So you can see here that there's the actual pinion gear and then the rack. And there's another video out there by another YouTuber. His name's Justin Goodell. He's got a CRX. He replaced his CRX with one of these. Did a video on this. And in his video, he said that originally with like the OEM steering rack, that if you go full lock to the left, it takes 4 complete turns to go all the way to the right. And with this steering rack, it's supposed to reduce that to about 2.5. So that's pretty big for autocross. These are the bushings that actually go on the steering rack. There's like one big one and then there's 4 little ones. The CRX that I've got potentially has an OEM steering rack, but the car was in a front end collision before I bought it, so I don't really know if it's actually OEM. And because I didn't want to have to deal with the problem of like, look, I don't have an OEM rack, and then this one that I got doesn't fit either, I actually got lucky enough to find a CRX HF in the junkyard and was able to pull that rack. So that's what we got here. So that, like, if worst case scenario comes and I can't, like, I pull the rack off of the car, the one that's already on there, and it's not the right rack, then I know that I've got one that's the right rack. And I'll show you how you can tell. It says specifically in all of the like marketing from Quaife that you have to have a rack that has the SH3L marking on it, but I spent all kinds of time looking through Google Images, all kinds of time trying to figure out where that marking is. And it wasn't until I looked at the junkyard and found one of these steering racks that I was able to actually identify where the marking is. So this here is from an HF. You can see. I had to bang it up a little bit in order to actually get it out. But if you look on the back side, right here, let's see if I can get it so you guys can actually see this. It says SH3L right there. So, right here. So if you want to look on yours and know, this is where you need to look. So this one I know will work. But just for the sake of education, I'll also take the other one apart so that you guys can see how you can take the other one apart as well. Because they're kind of a pain in the butt to get apart.
Be smarter than me. Unlock the steering wheel before you put the car in the air. To get these tie rods off, I think that the easiest way is to just use ball joint separator, but some people prefer to use a hammer. So I mean, ultimately it's up to you. What's easier for you? Just make sure you take the cotter pin out first. All right, so I know I look stupid, but you saw me pull out the pull off the tires and pull the tie rods off, or at least saw my legs do it. Inside the car, you have to undo the pinion from the actual like little clamp that holds it on to the steering mechanism. So let me show you that without tripping over the lift, of course. So in here, I already have, I know it's really dark, but when I get the light in here, it'll be better. I just gotta crawl over this jungle gym first without falling down. So there's a little cowl here that covers it with these little clamps on it. Pretty easy to get off. I just did it by hand. You actually don't even need anything. There's these weird little twisties that they're not really like a nut. They're like a plastic nut. And you can just use pliers to get them started and then use your fingers to get the rest off. But once you get all of that off, then inside of here behind the pedal, you can see that there's a mechanism that's back there. I've got a wrench on it right now, but you can see that right back there, there's the mechanism with the wrench on it. So if I move my hand back here, you get the light. There you go. Now you can see it. There's a nut here, right here. And that's the nut that holds the pinion gear. So you got to undo that nut so that whenever you actually get under and try to remove the rack, that it just comes right out instead of being stuck. Came off right here. So tie rod there. These ones I greased up, so that's why they look so like rough, but they actually are brand new. And then there's the two bolts that are under here that need to get taken off, and the two other bolts there that are holding the bushing. And I have a new bushing for this. Those are the red ones I showed you. And then again, the other tie rod end. So what I'm hoping I can do, because I mean, obviously there's like a header that runs across here. I'm hoping that I can take these bolts out, and now that inside of the car, the actual pinion gear, which is up here, is loosened, that I can pull these down, get the pinion gear all the way out, and then kind of back it off in the correct direction to try to pull them out without having to take the header off. So if I can get this backed out and then pull it out, then we'll see. But, you know, I'm going to give it a shot and then I'll let you know. All right, so after a lot of work, I was able to get it out. I didn't have to actually like take the headers out, so I'll show you. The headers here sit pretty low because they're the like alpha headers. So because of that, I was able to get it out. I think the secret though is there's this crossbar here, at least on like the CRX K-swap, that makes it really difficult to actually get it out. So it has to absolutely be full lock to the right side. So the pinion goes up in here, and if the steering isn't locked all the way across, you can't bend the tie rod enough to actually get it out. But I was able to get it completely out in one piece. So let me take you over there. So here it is. You can see I still have the tie rods on either end. I did take one of the boots off, and this is the boot side that you have to make sure that it's completely all the way in, or else it won't come out. So I'm gonna save the inner and outer tie rods because they're from Hard Race and they're new. I'll just take off the little crimp washer, the one that's right there on either side. If they're not torched, I'll probably reuse them, because if you don't have new inner tie rods, then I wasn't able to find them. You might be able to find them online, but I wasn't able to find them. So I'll take those off on both sides, and then I'll just sit this here and let you guys watch while I take this thing apart. You guys can see here, I was able to get one side. So these washers are important because they hold your inner tie rods on, but they're kind of a pain in the butt to get off. You have to kind of like fold them like a taco in order to actually hold them in. So getting these out is like not the most fun. But let's see if I can get you guys another shot of this one coming apart. So yeah, see how it's flat all the way around. So what the hope is that by doing it this way and pulling the inners out, that I won't have to readjust the tie rods as long as I put them on the right side. And then when I put the quick rack back into there, all I have to do is make sure that the steering wheel is straight and the tires are straight, and then it'll be pretty close to where it's supposed to be aligned. At least, you know, that's the hope. All right, that one's off too. Everything has to come out from the top. It's held in with a snap ring, so you have to get the full rack out if you want to do the replacement. As far as like the tie rod ends go, there are tools that allow you to do it on the car, though a lot of people will just use the tools, break off the washer, and put a new washer in. There's a dust cover on the top of this. It's not that easy to get off. I think you're technically supposed to pull it out from the middle. But the ones that I used, I kept breaking because you can't. It's like, it's similar to a seal that, like a transmission seal, in that it's got like a metal wire on the inside and a metal wire on the outside. So like, I guess technically you could probably pick it out, but I had a very hard time getting this thing out without, you know, destroying it. I did buy a new one, so that helps. Oh, there it goes. Okay. I think you kind of got to do some variation of what I just did to get it out. There's dust seal. It's middle. And in here, I have snap ring pliers. I'm just lazy. I might have to go get snap ring pliers. I don't know if these are gonna work. I'm just so lazy. Snap ring. have to pull a breaker out for that. There it goes. Okay. Not want to come off. So here's the hard part. This rolls pretty loosely, but the only way to get this bearing out is to either put vice grips on here and try to pry it out, or to use a vice and then hammer the outside of the housing to get it out. So I'm gonna hook this up in a vice because that's what worked for me, and then hammer it out of the housing, and I'll show you that. So I've got this in the vise like this. I would recommend a plastic hammer for this so that you don't ding it up too bad. I was able to use like a dead blow last time and it worked pretty good. That's how it's doing. And this is the old steering rack. I decided not to shoot the entire part where I put the pieces together, just because it just didn't make sense to
sit here and film basically the reverse order of everything else. I did want to show one aspect of it that ended up being a bit of an issue for me. So if you look at this here, I have the actual bearing inside of the new pinion gear, and then I have the new rack in here. I just used a synthetic grease because apparently the inner tie rods also use a synthetic grease, so I'm hoping that they'll play nice. But it's rated to 475 degrees Fahrenheit, so I think it should still be fine for a manual rack. But the thing I want to point out is that if you look inside of here, you can see that there's the original snap ring that I showed earlier, and then there's another snap ring that's on the actual bearing itself. The original bearing doesn't have one of these little black snap rings. It has it's got like a really bizarre looking snap ring. So I think I have one of the other pinions over here. Yeah, so this is one of the original ones. You can see that there's this weird sort of like egg-shaped like snap ring that holds the bearing on. We tried to get it off, but it didn't want to come off. So I cracked one in half, and then the other one ended up getting stuck, and I was like, how am I even going to get this back on anyway? So what I ended up doing is I went to AutoZone and just bought like a little $6 kit of snap rings and found one that was the right size in order to actually hold the bearing race in. So this one that's down in here, as you can see, is like more of a typical snap ring where it's got the two little prongs. So that's what I've got holding it in there. I think the rack itself is in here pretty tight, but there's a little tensioner here that you're supposed to use for the rack anyway, so that's something that I can adjust later down the line. The other thing that I'm going to do here is, I already pulled them out, but I'm going to replace the actual bushings that go on here as well as the Big Daddy that goes on the end. So I'll go ahead and do that, and before I put the final piece in the car, I will show you what the full rack looks like before I install it. This is a completed rack. I'm going to try to set it in there the same way that I got it out. So, wish me luck. All right, so I managed to get the steering rack in, and then I was going to leave it loose so that the actual pinion gear wouldn't go all the way up, because I had concerns that there'd actually be an issue with being able to get the steering column to match with the U-joints and then go into the actual pinion itself. But then soon realized that there's a curve or like a kink in the actual tie rod, so it has to be fastened all the way up for me to actually like identify where the where straight is. So like right now in the car, you can see that these are pretty straight. So like if I hold it to the side, you can see it's pretty straight, and then the other side also pretty straight. So I was only able to accomplish that by having everything installed and tightened down. But what then I realized is that this U-joint, because I have a second one I had a spare. This particular U-joint right here, there's enough room that you can actually slide this up and down both the steering rack like pinion gear as well as the steering column. So you can get them both together in the correct orientation and have it be straight and then just tighten it down. So that's what I'm going to do. So I have everything tightened in the car. It still needs to be torqued, but everything appears to be straight. So I'm going to go in there and put the bolts into these particular places, both on the actual pinion that's sticking up as well as the steering column. And I'm going to make sure that I Loctite these, because I do believe that the issue that I referenced in my previous video was actually that just this bottom gear was loose, so it was just skipping teeth, and that's why if you hit a big bump, it would throw the steering wheel one way and then throw the tires the other way. So in order to make sure that doesn't happen again, especially with the added power from the K, I'm just going to make sure that I use blue Loctite on these.